We have just witnessed the greatest flight in powerlifting history. I'm calling it right now. The Battle of the 83s at Powerlifting American Nationals this year lived up to the hype and then some. I was not planning on making any videos until my takeaways from PANAT's video at the end of the full championships, but I just could not resist after absolutely losing my mind on my television this morning watching this live battle. This was absolutely insane, and yeah, the greatest flight of powerlifting ever. I'm going to give you the 4 reasons why. Number 1, we've seen the 900 kilo barrier broken by an 83. Now this goes without saying, is absolutely monumental. Joey B, Joseph Bronstein, comes out as the national champion with a 900 kilogram total in the 83s, and there's your pound conversions right there. I know a lot has been said about this, and I did make a video when he first hit this in the gym at the start of this year, but hitting it in the gym and hitting it on the platform are 2 very different things, especially when you're not just hitting it on the platform at some local meet with no stakes. No, you're going up against the best of the best for not just a national title, but a spot on the world's team. And he did it on the biggest of stages. Now, I don't think people fully grasp how crazy this is. If you haven't been into powerlifting for the last couple of years, you're not going to fully fathom how insane 900 is. So I'm going to attempt to show you how crazy this really is. So IPF Worlds, as we know, started in 2012. These are the IPF Worlds winning totals in the 83s. Needless to say, Joey B would have won every single weight class handily on his openers, it seems. 845 is the biggest total we've seen on the IPF World stage, which was the IPF World record at the time when it fell just last year. Now, if we look at the 93s, these are the IPF World's winning totals, and would you look at that, not a single 900 to be seen. Joey B would have won, with this 900 kilo total performance, he would have won not just every single year in the 83s, but also every single year in the 93s. The weight class above, he would have beaten as well with this 900 kilo total. But wait, we're not stopping there. Let's look at the 105s, 2 weight classes above where Joey B competes. We're talking going up against guys that are over 20 kilos heavier than him. And if you look at those totals, Joey B would have won worlds the majority of years all the way up until 2021. So every single world championships we had in the pre-COVID era, Joey B would have won the 105s in as an 83 had he had done this 900. In fact, he would have podiumed in 21 and 22, and even in the last 2 years, he would have still finished 4th with this 900 kilo total. So yes, the sport has obviously developed a lot, but still, he would have finished no worse than 4th in the 105s on any given year. We're not stopping there. Let's look at the 120s. These are the 120 kilo winning totals, and there is a 900 there. Joey B would have won a 120 kilo world title in 2018 with this performance. We're talking 3 weight classes above where he's at. 3 weight classes above. We're talking almost a 40 kilo difference in body weight. That's almost 90 pounds. And he would have won in 2018 with this performance. That's how crazy we're talking. Not just that, but he would have podiumed the majority of years and finished no worse than 5th in the 120s. He would have finished on podium pretty much every single year bar 3, and his worst performance would have been 5th. He would have been top 5 as a 120 every single year in the history of Raw Classic Powerlifting. Let's look at the 120 pluses, because why the heck not? And you'll see there, no more green cells, so Joey B would not have won a 120 plus world title. However, he would have podiumed the first 2 years, 2012 and 2013, with this 900 performance. And you can see there are quite a few top 5 finishes there. As recently as 2022, he would have been 4th, and even last year, he would have been 6th with this performance. In fact, he would have been top 10 every single year. He would have finished no worse than 10th, totaling 900. Now, this is all to say that I know, the world record totals aren't necessarily always done on IPF Worlds, and it's a bit unfair to judge because a lot of times people, just do what they need to win on that day, especially in the recent years with Sheffield. But I'm just trying to put into perspective how ridiculous a 900 kilo total is. 900 is a strong total regardless of body weight. You could be 200 kilos. If you're totaling 900, you're an elite powerlifter who, as you can see there, would very well belong at the world stage, because you would be, hell, some years a podium threat with that total. That's how nuts 900 is that we're talking about. That's how crazy this milestone is. It was only last year that the 93s crossed into the 900s. After years of being in the high 8s and knocking on that door, we finally saw them cross into the 900s just last year. And now we saw Joey B do it a weight class below. Absolutely unfathomable. Oh, and he's only like 21 years old. Ridiculous. Now, the second reason why this was the greatest flight we've ever witnessed in powerlifting history is because it's one thing, like I said before, it's one thing to do this on a local level. It is a completely another thing to do this when the pressure is so high and you are literally up against the greatest 83s America and the world has ever produced. He went up against Taylor Atwood, Sean Noriega, Delaney Wallace, Angelo Fortino, Chris Perez, Sean Jin. The list goes on. It was a who's who of American 83s in powerlifting. And the top 4 all finished with 857.5. 857.5 is ridiculous. It was only last year that Russ totaled 860 and everyone lost their minds. Because prior to that, the most we'd seen was 840. Hell, it was only Sheffield last year. Sheffield 2024, we saw Delaney Wallace break the IPF world record with 842.5 and finish on podium 3rd place at Sheffield. That was just over a year ago. And here we are a year and a month or so later, and we've seen 857.5 finish 4th at the national championships. 15 kilos more than what Delaney Wallace broke the world record with at Sheffield. That was enough for him to podium on the biggest stage in powerlifting. That's how much this class has developed. That's how crazy his performance was. I've shared this before, the top 10 83 kilo totals going into this. This is what the list looked like. After today, this is what the list now looks like. You'll see quite a bit of shakeup. In fact, we saw 4 out of the top 6 performances of all time at this one meet. In this one flight, we had 4 out of the top 6 strongest 83 lifters ever put up the greatest numbers ever, with the exception of Ade and Russ, who weren't there. Like I said, we had the top 4, Joe, Taylor, Delaney, and Sean, all finish 857.5 plus. And like I said, how crazy 857.5 was even just a year ago when Russ first hit 860 at Nats, and now here we are. The development is crazy. The fact that 867.5 was only 3rd place and 860 wouldn't have even podiumed, absolutely mental. And obviously there was some other. So Chris Perez didn't have the best day. Angelo Fortino matched his 835 total, however couldn't push it any further, although he did load up big on the final deadlifts, which more detail on that to come. And Sean Jin didn't quite have the best of days either. But wow, to total 900 in a field like this is wild. And to see Taylor Atwood as well come back and beat Russ's total and load up for 901 was insane. Speaking up of loading up on deadlifts, actually first let's talk about the bench. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I'm just absolutely, I was losing my mind when I was watching this. This was insane. But the bench battle, we saw insane bench press battle in this flight, and American records and closing on the world record. So first we had Sean Noriega, who put up 210, and it was good enough for elbow depth, clipped the rack, 210. That was a national record. Then Taylor Atwood upped it by 6 kilos with that 216 to further the national record. But then, not to be outdone, the man of the moment, Joe Bornstein, steps up and presses 218 to walk away with the national record. Now, to put this into perspective, the IPF world record bench press, and also the overall bench press world record, the heaviest bench ever done in a full power meet by an 83 tested lifter, is 218.5, done by Owen Hubbard, which he did all the way back in 2019. So that has been a legendary record that has stood for 6 years now, going on 6 years, And we saw these lifters come within half a kilo of it when they were going back and forth with each other. Absolutely titanic bench battle. The strongest flight of bench press you'll probably ever see, or the strongest bench press flight we've ever seen in the class since, I would say, Owen Hubbard versus Brett Gibbs in 2018, where they traded world records back and forth, although they didn't end up as high as this. Crazy, crazy bench press battle. But then the deadlifts, the deadlift drama. So Joe Borenstein loaded up 377 on his second attempt to get 900. And this was hard. This was a big risk. This wasn't just Joey B, cruising to a 900. Yeah, he might have had a few more kilos on his squat and maybe his bench. Didn't look like he had much left on his deadlift. And I'll tell you what, especially with hook grip, you never know. Sometimes your grip can just open up and you can lose it. And I was worried when he loaded 377 and he was moving slow, because if he would have missed that, trust Taylor Atwood would have lowered his third and pulled what he needed. And Joe B would have had another attempt, but I could not believe he loaded 900 on his second. That was crazy. He went all in. If he would have missed that and not got it, he would have opened the door, left it wide open for Taylor to take the spot. But he pulled it, and that was the deadlift that gave him the mythical 900 for first place on his second attempt. But the deadlift drama was only just beginning, because the final round of deadlifts was absolutely insane. So we had Delaney Wallace step up first with a 350 pull, which was like 15 or 20 kilos above what he'd ever done before, to pull himself onto the podium. 867.5, monster total. Delaney, I know he looked a little disappointed. He would have loved to have taken that top spot, but man, 867.5, how can you be disappointed with a total like that? That is insane. So that was the first strike of the third round of deadlifts. Then came Sean Noriega to retake his place on podium, 352.5. This would have given him 870, and he pulled it. He locked it out. But that's what I was talking about with Joey B, man. It came out of his hands with the hook grip. And that's why I was worried when Joey B loaded up that 377, because that same exact thing could have happened. In fact, if you look at the lifts themselves, Sean Noriega's 352.5 moved easier and quicker than Joey B's 377. It was just his grip opened up. Had he have got that, it would have given him an 870 total and retaken third place, and we would have seen an 870 plus podium, which crazy given that Ross just entered 870 with his 870.5 at Sheffield. So we were that close to seeing an 870 podium, and Sean Noriega was that close to finishing on podium in the greatest flight of powerlifting history. But as it was, Delaney Wallace took that spot with his 867.5. But we weren't done yet. Taylor Atwood came out and attempted 367.5 for 901 for the win. Now, unfortunately, he didn't quite get it up off the floor. It was too much for him on the day. In fact, his second attempt was an equal PB. It moved pretty damn well, but he didn't have an extra 25 kilos. He maybe would have had an extra 10, 15, maybe 20. 25 was just too much on the day. And yeah, the fact he loaded this though, I lost my mind. I was jumping up and I was screaming at the TV. I could not believe what I was seeing. The fact that Taylor Atwood loaded 901 is crazy. And it just goes to show Joey B very much needed the 900 on the day. This wasn't just a, cruise and just max out, no pressure. No, he needed that 900, because I know that deadlift didn't go very far for Taylor, but let me tell you, I think that if Joey B would have missed his second, Taylor absolutely would have won. And how strongly Taylor Atwood look, that's another storyline here. The return of the GOAT, he came back, he beat Russ, totaling 876, which would have been the biggest 83 total we've ever seen if it weren't for Joey B on that same day. But wow, that was a crazy battle, and Taylor Atwood is not done yet. He's looking very strong, and he can get very close to that 900 in the future, I think. It's just going to be tough now with Joe Borenstein set to dominate for the next few years, it seems. So unfortunately, not a successful pull for the win for Taylor. But then we had Ange Fortino step up, another 800 plus pound deadlift attempt, 372.5 kilos. This would have given him 857.5, and this would have taken 4th place. However, not quite there on the day. It was very close. Again, similar to Sean Noriega, he did lift it successfully. However, there was a bit of up down there, and that's what got him the red lights. So the strength was there. Just, yeah, sumo can be a bit technical like that sometimes, where a bit of a bobble and balance becomes an issue, and red lights for that, which is unfortunate. Ange Fortino was looking very strong after squats. He hit a crazy tempo squat 320, looking very strong. Unfortunately, his bench continues to let him down when he missed his 2nd and his 3rd. And he was close to that deadlift, but it was always going to be an uphill battle, only progressing with a 165 bench against the strongest 83s to have ever lived. But Ange Fortino matched his best total, still off 835. I'm sure he would have wanted more, but that big final deadlift almost came through for him, and that would have given him a monster 857.5. And then, all that aside, we also had an attempt of the biggest 83 deadlift of all time, 385. This would have been an unofficial world record for Charles Hammonds, who wasn't necessarily in contention for a top 10 placing even. I believe this would have given him 9th place had he got it. He finished outside the top 10, but that monster deadlift, 385 kilos, which he almost got, damn near 850 pounds, 5 kilos above Anaharo's world record. Obviously, this would have been an unofficial world record, not international, but still, this would have been the biggest 83 deadlift ever. And again, he stood up with it. So we saw a lot of huge deadlifts in this final round that were completed, but just couldn't quite pass. We saw Sean Noriega stand up with his deadlift, unfortunately dropped it. We saw Angelo Fortino lock out his deadlift, unfortunately with some up down. And we saw Charles Hammonds lock out this deadlift and stand up with it, but again, just drop it due to grip. In fact, I want to look at that one more time, because this 385 moved, and it moved with some serious speed. That was insane. Yeah, again, grip gave out, but that was a locked out position. So absolute monster deadlift. That's just yet another element that made this the craziest flight in powerlifting history. Now, who knows how long this is going to stand? I would say this is going to stand for quite a while. However, the 93 battle is coming up tomorrow, and that could well beat this. We will see, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the 93s matches or tops how insane this flight was. But man, we're in for a treat as powerlifting fans this week. This battle of the 83s very much lived up to the hype.